This is episode 250 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Control and Compound Financial. They teach real estate investors how to multiply their wealth using infinite banking strategies. For a complimentary wealth coaching session or to learn more, visit www.controlandcompound.com/Andrew Hines. Welcome back to the show, episode 250. Wow, that sounds weird to say. That means we're roughly at 5 years of this podcast, because 52 episodes a year-ish. It's been fun, and today will not be a disappointment. So I have Syed Lateef on the show, and he is a Airbnb arbitrage expert in Chicago, Illinois. He joined me virtually, and we're getting better at these virtual episodes. Really, really great audio setup. And most importantly, he is a wealth of knowledge. We talked in depth about his strategy, why he continues to focus on Chicago, Illinois, and why other people are afraid to sort of enter that market. There's a lot of barriers to entry. Syed is your sort of stereotypical Lamborghini driving Airbnb arbitrage guy, likes his exotic cars. We went through the numbers and how he's achieving $1 million in net profit on his business annually, but there's massive seasonality that he deals with, which I know something about being in the hospitality business in the Tobermory area. And so he goes through a lot of these challenges. He talked a lot about the challenges that he had through the initial lockdown phase of the COVID scenario. And then, of course, he talked about how it really got good as demand really increased for local tourism. So he went through massive growth, massive retraction, adversity. This was not it's all sunshine and rainbows type of episode. This was a cold, hard truth kind of episode. And yes, he has a profitable business, but he took his knocks in building it. And I thought it was really valuable. A lot of lessons to be learned. So with that being said, if you're enjoying this show, please help me out by sharing it with somebody. And you can also help me out by commenting, liking, subscribing. These are things that just help the algorithm, help the channel to grow. But most importantly, it's you talking about this podcast and telling other people what you think of it. And if you're enjoying it, I would really appreciate it if you would share it with somebody. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into episode 250. Thanks for tuning in. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have Syed Lateef on the show to talk about Airbnb arbitrage. Thanks for doing this, Syed. Another virtual meeting, but I'm finally starting to get this system nailed down. So I appreciate you being yet another guinea pig for me.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk about my journey. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Syed, just give me high level, like what brought us together today? How'd you get started in real estate and Airbnb arbitrage? Take it from the top.
Sure. So I'll just kick it off to tell you where I'm at right now in my business, then I'll tell you where I started from. So at the moment, I am in the Airbnb rental arbitrage space. I've been doing this for 7 years now. I have 300 units under management, and I've done 8 figures of revenue 2 years in a row now.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's just to understand where I'm at today. But taking it back 7 years ago when I started, so I initially started by purchasing my first multifamily property, doing FHA financing. So initially I was all over Bigger Pockets in the forums, listening to all the podcasts, and I wanted to get the financial freedom. I was working, corporate 9 to 5, and I was trying to figure out how I could replace my 9 to 5 income, get out of the rat race. The typical real estate investor that's starting off, that's kind of where my mindset was at. So after learning a lot, and I finally took action and learned about house hacking and purchased my first multifamily property using 5% down FHA financing. And it was a 4-unit building plus basement. And I lived in one of the units and furnished it really nicely for myself. And after the year was up is when I had all this furniture in a nice unit. And I was like, let me see what opportunities are out there. And I listened to an individual on Bigger Pockets that was listing their unit on Airbnb. So I was like, why not? Let's try it out. So I put it up in February, which is like my slower season month. And, I made market rent for my Airbnb during that month. And then the next month was March. And all of a sudden I made 2 times rent. And I was like, whoa, like what's going on? And then started getting into April, May, and June, I started making 3 times rent. So that's when like I had like the, light bulb that went off, and I was like, hey, how do I get more of this? So at the same time, all my other units were up for renewal, and I ended up making majority of my building short-term rentals on Airbnb, and every unit that I put on Airbnb made 3x rent during the summertime. So that's when it was like, oh, like wow, this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. I need to go all in on this. And I ended up telling my corporate 9 to 5 job. I was doing financial analysis at a Fortune 500 company. I was like, I want to give my month's notice and I want to do this full time.
Wow.
A little back and forth. They ended up asking me to stay part time for the remainder of the year. I said, sure, if I keep my benefits, like, that'll be awesome. But at the same time, I was like working on my business during the time I was working part time anyway.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the year was up, and January 2018, is I was full time in this. I started my property management business, and I initially started looking to do the like revenue share model where I would find operators that already had short-term rentals,
Mm-hmm.
and I would tell them like, okay, we'll take an 80-20 split,
Mm-hmm.
plus the cleaning fee. And yeah, I launched my business in
So
January 1,
you took
2018.
20%? You took 20% at that point?
Yeah, I took
Yeah.
20%, and they took 80%. And it was just in my market, there was not a lot of management companies doing Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, I, just simple Google search showed me like there's only one other company that showed up in SEO. So I was like, okay, I'll create a website, see what happens. I'll invest like, $1,500 on SEO. All of a sudden, it shot me up to number 1 and 2, depending on the day that you
Yeah.
search, management. And all of a sudden, I started getting all these leads, and I said like this is like crazy. This is amazing. Like there's not that much competition. People are in need of the service. Like this is gonna be, amazing.
That's
So that's
pretty
kind of like how I
cool.
start. Yeah, it's kind of how I
So
started my journey.
I didn't even know SEO still worked. I feel like contrived SEO. Like of course you can do like organic, like just content creation, and you'll get there, right? So you just
Right.
paid some guy to help you appear on the
Yeah,
on the
it
page.
was like I went to Upwork. I
Yeah.
created a job, and he was talking about this language that was over my head, but I was like, $1,500, I'll take the risk, and
Hmm.
whatever he did, it got me up to 1 and 2, and that was like that gave me some like credibility. I was getting a lot of like leads by just
Hmm.
people searching on Google, and that's when I started getting clients, and that's how I started my business.
Very cool. And what market did you start in? Like where was that first purchase?
My market that I made my first purchase was in Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Are you still are you still active in that state?
Yeah, I'm still active in Chicago, correct. Majority of my portfolio is in Chicago.
Oh, okay. Do you
Yeah.
have anything out of state or no?
So I have small partnerships out of state in other states with other partners,
Mhm.
but majority of my business is out of Chicago.
Nice. I know a guy who was doing that down there also in Illinois. I'm not sure if it was
Nice.
specifically Chicago, but probably was. Um, Tell me a little bit about why you like that market. Is it just because it's familiar because it's home, or is it something more than that?
So it's because I'm familiar with it and it's home. That's what I know. It's for me, in my opinion, the best place to invest is in your backyard.
Hmm.
But fortunately, it's been a good market to me. It's a highly regulated market. So there's situations outside that don't allow a huge supply coming in. And because of it being so difficult for people to start the business, it's been a successful market for me.
And what are some of the barriers to entry for other people trying to do this?
So for buildings, 4 units and less, you need to live in the building to do short-term rentals. So like single family homes, you can't do it. It needs to be a primary residence. So that takes a lot of those small mom and pop individuals out of there. And you can only have 25% of a building up to 6 units. So then that kind of takes away like the big players that want like whole entire buildings or entire floors of like downtown areas where um the downtown buildings in my market don't want Airbnb, because if you only have 6 units, it just ruins the culture of the building, right? So there's like this middle ground in between, like small guys, it's difficult. You can't do it unless you live in the building. And for the big guys, they don't want it. So there's like buildings in between, that are like, 6 units to 25 units that I could take 1 or 2 units in that building. And that's kind of like the regulation in there. And that kind of makes it so a lot of people don't come into my market and, start the business. At the same time, the permitting process is challenging and difficult. You cannot end up marketing it on Airbnb until you get the license. And sometimes it takes 1 to 3 months. And then for that, it's like people can't, foot the bill for 3 months of rental arbitrage without knowing if you're going to get a license or not. So,
So you've carved out
yeah,
your niche there. A lot of people would just not bother because of the bureaucracy.
right.
And I'll
Exactly.
hear people talk about Illinois in general and just say, hey, there's other states that are, more investor friendly.
Right.
However, you're not a regular landlord. I mean, I'm sure obviously doing that, there's a lot more red tape, a lot more, um, a lot more concerns. I don't know if it's anything like where we're from here, but there are tenants in this province that have been not paying rent for a year and are still in the unit.
Right. Right.
Is that
Yeah.
is that similar in Illinois?
Yeah. It's tenant friendly in my market.
Mm-hmm.
And people get tenant rights if they're staying, 32 days plus. And that's why a little bit of Airbnb is good in the sense that,
Mm-hmm.
you don't get tenant rights. If you want somebody out of your unit after a week or two,
Mm-hmm.
you can, tell them to leave. Sometimes, you kind of force them to leave.
Right. Okay. And tell me a little bit about like the overall plan here. Like what made you do this? There was obviously a lot of hustle needed to get into 10 figures of rental income.
Right. So your question was,
Well,
the
what was your motivation to do this?
so my motivation to do this was I wanted financial freedom. That's my biggest thing. I wanted to not work for a boss. I wanted to be my own boss. And I was motivated by money. I was at my corporate job, making a good salary, but I would work every year and a half, and I would get a promotion, which was great, but it was like 5 to 10% increase in my salary, which was not significant. It increased my like 2 week pay by $100 to $200. Or I wait for a year and I get a 3% merit increase, which increases my pay $20 for the every 2 weeks. It was like nothing. It was small pennies, right? So one, I wanted financial freedom in the sense that I wanted more money, but I also didn't want a boss, and I wanted to be able to do the things I wanted to do on a daily basis. So by trying to get into real estate allowed me to get that financial freedom. Initially, I thought it was going to take me 10 to 15 years to have enough, cash flow to replace my 9 to 5. But because of the Airbnb opportunity, it happened over like, a handful of months. So it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I felt like, and I, went all in on it.
So the 300 units, did you generate most of those leads yourself? And they're not all arbitrage, right? Several of those are just profit split, like a management contract.
Okay. So just to take it back a little bit more, initially I started doing the profit split, which was like, the 80-20 split.
Mm-hmm.
And I was bringing on clients like, small mom and pop clients that had like 1 unit. And I quickly realized that I did not like that business model at all. And it was a lot of hand holding. The
Okay.
client was never happy with the performance that you provide, regardless of how much extra money they're making doing,
Mm-hmm.
this type of business. And it was just like it took a toll on me. It was actually there was one client that made me like hate the business at a point, where I had 10 units like when I quit my job finally, and this client brought me in 20 units. So all of a sudden I went from 10 units to 30 units, and it took me months to onboard her. And finally, when we went live, is when it was like, uh, you know, she was super micromanaging, made me feel like her assistant, telling me to go pick up this $25 parking fee here. Why isn't this person I'm happy here? Like, and why aren't you pricing it right? And then all of a sudden she agreed to handle some maintenance of the building to get better reviews. And then she said, no, I don't want to spend any more money. So um it was like a total nightmare of a client. She would be calling me at like midnight, like drunk, and she would like start yelling at me on the phone about one thing or another. And like it was 3 months in that I was onboarding, and finally after 1 month of finally being onboarded and going live, she took the units away from me. So I went from 10, I went to 10 units to 30 units, back to 10 units, like, so quickly. And that literally took a lot of toll on me. I'm like, I just wasted like, hours and hours and hours working on this project. And all of a sudden, nothing came of it. So I went back to the drawing board, and I went to this one random networking event in my local market. It was at a bar, and there was a group talking, and one of the people in the group ended up saying like, "Hey, we're looking for people to do Airbnb in our building." And I was like, I never heard that in my life, so anybody saying that. So I was like, I'm interested. Like, how do I do this? And she's like, okay, talk to the property manager and let's see if we can make it happen. So I ended up reaching out to the property manager, no response. 1 week later, no response. Finally, I was reaching out every week for like, 2-3 months. And finally, he said, he's on the phone. He's like, oh, we'll see. I'll let you know. Maybe come in our office and we could talk about it. So then I started coming to the office pretty often. And finally, one day he's like, I'm fed up with me. And he's like, just talk to the boss. He can make the decision today and let you know. So they put me in a room with the boss, with the owner of the, big management company. They had about 1,000 units. And at any given time, they had 100 units vacant. And this guy was like super alpha. He comes in and he just tears me apart. And it's like, listen, I'm not looking to get into the Airbnb business. I'm not looking to get in the furniture business. I am staying in my business of real estate. I'm sorry, but we cannot do business. Stop bothering us. And at a last ditch effort, I said, like, listen, like you have 100 units. Can I lease 2 units from you and I'll furnish it and I'll put it on Airbnb and I'll take on the risk of the rent? And he was like, okay, if you don't cause me any problems and you pay me rent, then you could do that. And that's when it was like the launch of the rental arbitrage business for me. And that's when I took on my first 2 units. Even before there was a term with the name rental arbitrage, it was back in 2018 when this happened, is when I got into the rental arbitrage business. So finally, I get 2 units, start paying him for 2-3 months, and things are going good. I go back to him. I'm like, hey, I'm doing good in these. Can I have 2 more? And he said, yeah, you've been paying on time, not causing me issues. Like, go ahead. So then I got 2 more. A couple months later, I'm like, can I get 4 more? He's like, yes, you're really good to us. Like, take these 4 units. And then like a couple months later, he comes up to me. He's like, I have this, 10 unit opportunity for you if you're interested. And then again, I get more units. And all of a sudden with this one landlord, I have 35 units with him. And, business is good. All of a sudden, I'm in the rental arbitrage space, even before there was such thing as rental arbitrage.
Why did he have so many?
Because he has 1,500 units, and now I think he has 2,500 units
Across different buildings. Like this was just in his portfolio.
He has a big portfolio, and they average a vacancy of like 6-7%, and there's units that are in the process of being rehabbed because they do that like burst strategy, but at a mass level.
Right.
And right when they get live, like it depends on like the seasonality of like the timing of they become live. And if somebody's guaranteeing rent right away, like why not, And if they're
so
not,
these aren't condo buildings. Like these are just apartment own like single owner buildings.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So he's one of the bigger operators in my local market.
Nice. So is he just the manager or also the owner, or works for the owner?
He's actually an owner as well. So I don't think he has any outside investors. He's one of the most wealthiest guys in real estate in our market.
That's a good guy to have on your contact list.
Oh, definitely.
So a little bit of luck with a lot of persistence, and you got a good contact that you grew with a bunch.
That's exactly it is. People say it's lucky, or I put myself in the right situation to, get that luck. I was persistent.
Yeah. I don't really believe in luck.
Right. I was going to networking events. I wouldn't take no for an answer. I was showing up at their office. I kept on asking, even after getting the answer no. I kept on coming up with different ways, and finally I got a yes. Right. So, call it luck, call it persistence. No,
that's really interesting. And the people who said they wanted somebody to do Airbnb in the building, like where did that come from? Like why did they want that? Like what was their motivation to want that?
Yeah, I think it's because they had one of their employees asked to do Airbnb in their buildings. So they were intrigued with the model. So it was probably the topic of discussion in their meetings at that time.
So they just wanted to see somebody try it out. They wanted a guinea pig.
Yeah. So initially, and then maybe like by the time I came in, it was like 4, 5, 6 months later. Maybe they're like, oh, They don't like the seasonality. They don't like the people
Mhm.
coming in. Who knows what that person was doing? That employee that was doing Airbnb in two of their units.
Yeah.
I came in with a different approach, and they agreed to mine.
Hi, friends. I just wanted to take a moment away from the episode to tell you about my brand new structured coaching program. This is the first time I've ever offered a structured coaching program where we'll have regular meetings in addition to an intro call to go through what your goals are and help you get on a plan to achieve those goals within real estate. So if you've followed me for some time and you feel that I would be a fit for you to help you achieve your goals in real estate based on my skill set, based on the topics we cover on this show, I encourage you to head over to my website, andrew-hines.com/coaching, and fill out the questionnaire so that we can schedule a call and figure out if it's a fit for us to work together. Let's face it, most people could benefit from a second set of eyes and ears going over their strategies, different deals that they're looking at, and helping to springboard ideas back and forth. This is a program that's exactly for that. So if you're looking to build confidence in what you're doing in real estate investing and get very clear on what it is you're trying to accomplish, this might just be the program for you. Take a moment, fill out that questionnaire, and let's schedule a chat. So tell me a little bit about like what you see as what are the positives of it, obviously beyond the cash flow, and then what are some of the hurdles, the challenges that you face with
Yeah.
this model in this market?
Yeah, so I've gone through crazy amount of challenges in this market in rental arbitrage because I've gone through, COVID was the biggest challenge, for me at the time. But the benefits of the rental arbitrage business and why I liked it so much, it was because nobody was overseeing what I was doing. It was all on me, right? All I had to do is make sure is I pay the rent. They were handling the maintenance side of things, it's just putting the request in their portal and they will handle that issue. But as long as I pay the rent, there's no one complaining to me about the picture frame being off or like where did this go or whatever the case is. I
Mhm.
just had to make sure I was making enough money. So I was in control of this. Now it was no longer that management type like relationship with an owner.
Mhm.
That's the benefit. And also, uh, as long as you pay the rent, any dollar above the rent is your money, right?
Yeah.
So uh
Like utilities are included typically, or are you paying the
no,
utilities on?
utilities are not included.
Yeah,
So
you're always
it's like a
paying your
norm.
own.
It's a normal landlord tenant
Yeah.
relationship. It's like I pay rent, I pay
Mhm.
utilities.
But the heat in the building's probably centralized. Are you paying that too,
So
or
it
just
depends on
electric?
the building.
Mhm.
And some in my buildings, some of them are really old, and it's like heat included, and then
Mhm.
some of them are like metered
Yeah.
gas. So it really depends on the building.
So
And
give
then
me an
sometimes
example
they
of.
add a utility fee. They take the whole
Oh, they just take a
heating
fee. Yeah.
costs and then they distribute it to all the tenants as
Yeah.
well. It's like called
Yep.
like rubs or something like that.
Yeah, they do like a cost recovery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
what are you typically paying? Like, give me like an average one of your 300 units. Like, what
yeah.
rent are you paying?
So my type of unit is like a B minus type property. B minus, some C plus, but I'm majority of my units are not like in A buildings in downtown areas and with like luxury or like amenities or anything like that. For one, those are really attractive to long-term tenants, so they never have an issue with that to get it rented. A landlord needs to be like motivated for me to come in, or else like why would you want me in there, right? I need to provide some type of value. So typically my units are like 1 to 2 bedroom units in um, decent neighborhoods. Some are really nice neighborhoods, and my rent typically ranges from like 1,700 to 2,300.
Okay, and so these are slightly dated buildings, like they're not
So
A
it's
class.
really dated. It's really dated buildings with updated units. So
Updated units, dated building. Okay.
yes. So like the insides are like rehab, nice bathrooms and kitchens, but like it's like old walk-up buildings
Mhm.
that, that's how kind of Chicago's architecture and buildings are.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, so more incentive for them. As far as um, like looking at over time, have you found that this has been easier to get renters on Airbnb, or has it been harder?
In the unit type that I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously the nicer the unit you have, it's more attractive to an Airbnb guest. And but that's not the inventory that's offered to me. So I got to work with what I have. as
Okay.
long as I still make the margins that I make to make sure I'm a profitable business. I don't care if I'm a Neiman Marcus versus a Walmart or a McDonald's
Yeah.
versus a steakhouse, right? So for me, this is the model that I only can do, and it works for me.
Right. And what do you, so on that, say it's like a unit where you're paying $2,000 a month, like
Right.
there are some of them you're paying 2,000, like including utilities. Is that fair or no?
Yeah, I'm sure it adds up to that. So
Okay. And then what would you get on average per month across the year if you're paying 2,000 a month on
yeah,
rent?
so my market is real seasonal. So all my money is really made in the summertime, and the
Okay.
wintertime is I'm actually at big losses. But on average, I'm making like 1.8 to 2.0 times rent in my
S-
as from a revenue
Okay.
perspective
Across the year.
across a year. And
Yeah.
then I have all my expenses associated with my business, which includes like the utilities, internet, supplies, softwares, employees,
Hmm.
cleaners, and then runners. And so like my margins that I make net income after everything is has been ranging between 10 to 20% net income margin after all my expenses. But that's because I run a big scaled operation. If you have
Yeah.
small units, it's you doing the work. So that gets added back into you end up getting maybe 30-40% worth of like, net income margin if it was just you with like a handful of units.
Okay. So you might have a unit where you're paying all in 2,000 a month. You're making 3,600 a month on average. Is that fair?
Yep.
So on that specific unit, um, you're making in a year like 40 grand. Does that sound about right?
Revenue wise, yes.
Yeah.
And then
Revenue wise. Yeah. And then,
yeah,
then you're just taking off that. So 24,000 would be your annual rent. So you're getting like 18,700 on the
for
year.
gross income, but like it's still a lot of expenses that get tagged onto that. After
Yeah,
all the
okay. So let's
expenses, yeah,
walk
yeah,
through. So
yeah,
your
yeah,
24th, so your expenses look like this: $24,000 in rent you're paying out.
yeah.
And then you might have, well, let's just say utilities are on top. You're going to pay what, $200 a month for the year?
For
Is that
utilities, sure.
including internet, or is there more to it
So
than
like
that?
utilities are going to be $200 a month, say, and then internet's going to be another $50 a month, so
Yeah,
250. So maybe
250.
like $3,000 worth of utilities.
Okay. All right. 3,000 of utilities. And then are you paying, like you said, runners? You need boots on the ground in these different
Yep.
areas.
Cleaners,
So, and
cleaning
cleaners.
expense,
So,
yeah.
what kind of expense are you looking at across the year for that, for one unit?
So again, it'll be the cleaners, it'll be utilities,
Hmm.
internet, it'll be uh supplies, any replenishing of supplies
Yeah.
in the unit.
So you might spend like
Yeah,
$1,000 in a year for all supplies for a unit, or is that even too
yeah,
much?
yeah. That's a reasonable thing to
Yeah.
say.
Okay.
And
And
then
then
there's
cleaners, you're
softwares,
paying like what, $75 a
a
turnover, or
turn, right?
is it something like that?
Yep.
And any given month, like how many turns are you doing?
So
I know
maybe
it's
like
seasonal, so
yeah, it's seasonal. So just let's do it like basic numbers. Do like give it a 10. We'll give 10.
10 per
10
month on
turns.
average,
Yeah,
and then times
yeah,
12. So that's like 9 grand right there in
sure.
cleaning fees. So I've got, going back to the top, so 3,600 a month on average across the year, 24,000 paid out in taxes, or sorry, not taxes, in rent, 3,000 in utilities, 9,000 in cleaning, 1,000 in your supplies, which leaves 6,200 left on the year. So about 500 a month positive cash flow on that specific unit if we're using an example. Does that sound about
That
right?
that sounds like almost what I tell people is how much you probably make a month from doing this business model. You
Yeah.
hear a lot of people on social media say it's 1,000 and or more, but in my practical
Mhm.
model, in my type of inventory,
Yeah.
I've been ranging between, depending on the year, like $300 to $500 per unit, per
300 to
month.
500 per
Yeah,
per month.
yeah. And then
Which, I
people talk,
mean,
yeah,
300 times 300.
yeah, right.
That's $90,000 a month
Yep.
in positive cash flow. So that's not nothing. So
No.
it takes a bit of work to set up, of course. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your team?
Okay, yeah. So I'll tell you about my team, like what I had a month ago and like what I have today. So, I had about 100 resources in my business, helping me run my business. where 50% of them were located out in the Philippines. So I started my business using virtual assistants, but I don't call them virtual assistants anymore. They're like my, my leadership team is all in Philippines now too. So 50 people in Philippines handle all my back end work, which includes the operations, guest communications, checking guests in, helping guests with any issues. And then they handle all the cleaning schedules and handling all the purchasing of the supplies. And then I have my finance team that handles all my like accounts payables. And then they handle all my bookkeeping and my financial reporting and my forecasting and my expense management.
Mhm.
And then I have my revenue team that handles all my pricing for me. I have a team that onboards units at all times, that connects them to all the softwares that I have, uploads all the pictures to the Airbnb site, creates the content on the actual Airbnb marketing listing. And I also have an HR to handle like, performance of how everyone's doing. So, I have an entire organization out in the Philippines that were about 50 resources. And then there was 50 resources in my local market, but all of them are, labor type jobs, which is basically cleaners, runners, handyman, movers, and unit checkers, and one general manager that oversees all that. So that's kind of my organization, what it was like a month ago. But I started doing some benchmarking to see like, is this like resource count is correct to my peers. And I got connected with some of my colleagues who have similar sized businesses than me. And I realized that like I am over hired in my Philippine team, and I ended up making some cuts. So I went from 50 to 35 now. And I found out the reasons why I ended up doing that. And it was driven by it was 2022 where I had the COVID pent up demand year, and I was scaling up like crazy style. I was adding units. Demand was once in a lifetime demand, and I thought I was going to get to this 400 unit count, by 2023, and I thought I was going to make this like $17 million of revenue. So I made my dream team. I made my like dream organization out in the Philippines. I started hiring crazy style. I'm like, okay, I want this one person to do utilities, and I want this one person to do screening, and I want this one person. I started individualizing roles, and ended up not hitting my forecast. The pent up demand was just a 1 year thing. My demand decreased year over year, and all of a sudden I'm not getting to 400 units. I'm actually releasing some units, and and all of a sudden my revenue is flat year over year. But I hired as if I was going to have 400 units, So I quickly realized that like, okay, I cannot sustain this. It's a lot of wastage. Let's cut, a significant amount of people to make it make sense. After talking to some of my colleagues that had similar models as me, and all of a sudden, 35 resources out in the Philippines, and my business is still running as is. I haven't had to get into the business at all to like change anything else. So it was actually the right move to do. It was a wrong move to hire that much, but I had to make the change now.
Who were you talking to? Like, who were your influences that sort of helped you along the way to get to that point? Because I'm sure you didn't start off with an assistant. You were probably doing everything yourself before you
So
realized
yeah,
that you needed to add in help.
so it was actually the opposite. Immediately when I started the business, it was with virtual assistants. It's because they were so inexpensive, and I'm always a guy that always tries to find outside help for everything I do. You know, that was just like my personality always. Like even through college, I would just always get outside help to like help me with different things in college. So
Your assignments?
um, yeah, basically my essays, right?
Yeah.
It was just like how my personality was. Like I try to make things easier for me, and fortunately, that skill is a good skill set in entrepreneurship, right? Like
It's critical.
but yeah, before it was oh, you're not the smartest guy, you just get shit done from other people. But now all of a sudden the smartest guy gets the shit done from other people. So
Mhm.
I started off the business hiring VAs. I was having my sister help me onboard units. um I would
It's
get
like she was
cleaners to
calling up people and asking them if they were
no,
interested
no.
in.
See, that's the only thing that I do, because it's a
Yeah.
relationship based. But she was onboarding units in the sense that she was good at decorating and furniture, so she was
Okay.
like making the units really nice.
So you need
So
to have
then we
somebody like that.
yeah we were handling the We were hiring movers and handymen and cleaners. Like I didn't do any of that stuff. I never did a bed in my life, you know. I never cleaned a bathroom in my life.
Hmm.
So and then the back end work, I had other people help me with talking to the guests. So I started my business that way, and I just continue doing it that way as well. And you go through certain reflection points in your business at certain unit counts. Like, okay, now I'm at 20 units. How many people do I need at 20 units? And then I go through an exercise to find out. Okay, now I'm at 50 units. I'm at 100 units, and then I make my dream organizations always. You know, sometimes I did it right, sometimes I
Yeah.
did it wrong. You know, like I was doing it right for a long time, and then I got too smart, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make this perfect organization. I'm gonna do record numbers, and no one can stop me. And all of a sudden, demand stopped me, you know.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you know, I had a bad winter, so all of a sudden my confidence level decreased, and I wasn't adding units, and I was dealing with cash flow problems, and I was, you know, negative in my account for winter, you know, and you know, you start not wanting to add 100 more units to be in a
Hmm.
worse situation, you know. So like things happen, right? And you know, you have to adjust with your business when things happen.
Yeah. Did you find like so more recently it's been harder? Like obviously these aren't huge numbers when we're talking like 500, a month in cash flow when you describe the organization you have. Because one
Yeah,
VA you're gonna be paying them what, 1,000 a month,
right. 1,000 a month.
something like that. And how
Yeah.
many do you have? You
How many
said
what?
35. You have 35
35. Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Um, so that's $35,000 a month that you
Right.
got to pay them. Plus you have direct employees working for you, or is everybody a subcontractor?
All those other people are contractors, and they're
Yeah.
based off usage, right?
So then you're only paying them as you have business. So your
Yeah.
35,000 is really the fixed, the
Right.
administrative
It's
overhead.
yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
more than 35,000 because not all of them are getting 1,000 a month. Like I
Some of
have
them are more.
high
Yeah.
level leadership there now. You know, I think
Mm-hmm.
it was like 45, 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
kind of
Not nothing. So we were
yeah,
talking about, you've got like 90,000 um, a month sort of gross profit coming in ish, and we're ballparking. So there's a good chunk of there's $1 million there, right? So
yeah, $1 million. Yeah,
it
that's kind
sounds
of
very very like still profitable even that. Well, what does that work out to be if you're paying like about 50,000 a month? So you're basically 600,000 on
600,000. Yeah,
salaries, and then you have some
yeah,
operating expenses, and then of course you have all of your boots on the ground. So
yep. So
yeah, we're talking
like
big
yeah,
time entrepreneurship.
oh yeah, like it's crazy. Like you re-engineered my P&L by unit level count to get to exactly what I get on an annual basis, and it tied. So it was like, oh, okay, you know, then whatever I told you is correct, right? Because I always look at it from a holistic
Yeah,
perspective and my, you know, monthly P&L.
yeah,
But yeah, on an annual basis, you know, this year I'm right now at $1.2 million of net income. I just got my October results in. I'm gonna take losses in November, December. So it's gonna bring it down back to like $1 million or a little less
net
than that.
income, or is
Net income.
that sales?
Sales is 10.7
Oh
million
yeah,
dollars
sales.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay, so
yeah.
so you're
And then
talking net income after paying everybody, you're a million.
right, net income after is like $1 million take home. Then it's then okay, but the thing is like this, like it's $1 million net income, but the losses I take from November to March is going to
Yeah.
be like I'm forecasting to take losses of $1.5 million in the next months, and right now I have like $1.3 million of reserves. So
Okay,
that
so you need the cash.
it comes to a point,
Yeah,
and I just paid $300,000 of prepaid tax to
yeah,
the IRS and my state. So I get in, even though I make a lot of money, I get into a cash flow problem every year. It's the same thing. So like the next 5, 6 months is depressing for me. And then I just
yeah,
have to go back to make sure I get to this summer season to make my money all over again. But then if I ended up scaling you adding more units, then I'm going
yeah,
into the same situation every year. And it's just like and like my thing is like this. If there's one year that I can't get to my summer season, then I did this all for nothing
yeah,
because it all goes away. And that's kind of
yeah,
what happened like, you know, in COVID, right? So that was my one time where, you know, March 15th, start of spring break, I'm like, all right, you know, I made it out of my slow season. I made it out of all the losses at that time. Now I'm here time to make money. And all of a sudden, you know, there's an announcement that all the flights have stopped. And there's an announcement Airbnb is refunding all my guests all their reservations. and all of a sudden I have $500,000 worth of rent coming up in a couple of weeks, and I have $0 to my name. So like that was
Whoa.
that year, you know.
Dude, that's you've been through some stuff. So did you have to give up some units at that time?
Mhm. Yeah. So just telling you that story. It was that year of 2020, March 15th, I had 180 units. And maybe 3 months earlier, I probably had 120 units.
Mhm.
So during the winter time is the time that I could scale. Landlords talk to me in winter. They don't talk to me at all in summer. They don't need
Mhm.
me at all. They're never motivated for me to do business with them, right? So winter time comes. Again, I think I'm the smartest guy alive. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get outside funding. I'm going to get some debt. I'm going to open 15 credit cards. I'm going to add these 60 units. I'm taking losses in the winter months. And all of a sudden, I'm $500,000 of debt, losses in the winter, and I'm ready to go. 180 units, spring break, summertime. I'm going to make $1 million this year net income, right? And things didn't go to plan. You know, it hit me like a brick wall. And all of a sudden, I had to go to the landlords and tell them, like, listen, this is really bad for my industry and my business. I don't think I could sustain this at all anymore. What do you want to do? I could give you three options. One, let's go into a revenue share, just like what I did, the 80-20 split, but this time it was 50-50 split. Let's terminate the leases and I pick up my stuff and leave. Or, you know, you can sue me, but I have nothing, you know, I have nothing like
Mhm.
left. Like you can sue me for nothing. So there was, out of the 180 units, there was like 30 of those units from different landlords that told me that, listen, we're not COVID charity. We're going to sue you until you have nothing. You know, there was 30 of those units, or 40, 50 of those units. The landlord said, just pick up your stuff and leave. And then majority of the units were from two landlords, and there were 90 units. And they're like, okay, let's see what happens in the next 2 months. Let's go on a revenue share, 50-50 split. So that was huge. And then the landlords that said we're not COVID charity ended up realizing how bad COVID was going to be to like the entire world and entire business. They ended up saying, okay, fine, let's settle. You know, 2 months rent, you take your stuff, or we'll keep your stuff, whatever the case is. So I quickly went from, you know, 0 to 180 back down to 90, you know, like overnight, you know, but I was still in business, which was the most
Yeah.
important thing. So yeah. And then, you know, COVID, after seeing what happened in, like, for the Airbnb space, COVID was not that bad, right? We were cleaner than hotels.
Oh
And
yeah, it eventually probably it worked in your favor, as you said,
oh
right?
yeah, significantly. That's why I'm in business today, because I went to those landlords. You know, if obviously if I could go back in time, I wish I didn't remove all my stuff from all those 90 units and settle payments and doing all that, but I didn't know at that time, right? It was in a situation where I had like $5,000 in my account and I had a $500,000 rent payment. So it was just like I had to make
Yeah.
crazy moves, you know. And at the same time, I had to bring outside funding in to help pay for my debt.
Mhm.
So I refinanced one of the buildings that I had. You know, I freed up like $120,000 of cash. You know, I paid down
Yeah.
some credit cards. And then the EIDL loan came out, 150,000. That paid off. Like, I consolidated a bunch of credit cards and my private, you know, lenders, and I paid them off. You know,
Mhm.
there was some cash injections for me. Like, PPP was so low for me because all of my people were contractors. So I only got like 20,000, 25,000 for that, you know. So that's kind of like the story behind that. And then to continue on that story is COVID wasn't that bad. I wasn't having to guarantee rent anymore. I was doing a 50-50 revenue split with landlords, and demand was good. Things were going good. But at the same time, there was one thing a couple special things that happened. There was a company that went bankrupt. One of the biggest STR companies at the time. The name of the company was Stay Alfred. They had like 1,000 units all over the country, and I gave them an offer for some of their furniture during their bankruptcy. And the offer was so low because at the time I didn't even need their furniture. You know, like there was nothing I could do with it because I didn't even know if I was going to, you know, survive the business. So I was like, you know, hey, I'll give you $200 per unit for your furniture. And then 6 months go by in COVID, and all of a sudden they respond back, okay, we accept your offer. How many units do you want? So I'm like, okay, now all of a sudden I'm in business, things are going good. My landlord is coming to me and telling me that he has high vacancy. And now Stay Alfred is telling me that, oh, they're selling me my
Mm.
furniture for $200 per unit. So it was like match made in heaven for these two different things. So I started going all over the country, picking up Stay Alfred furniture for 2 cents on the dollar and bringing that furniture back to my local market, putting in 4 different warehouses and then putting it into these units and doing revenue share with them. So all of a sudden, I'm going back from 80 units and I'm scaling up back to what I was before and more since then, right? And it was like, now looking back on it, like most likely if COVID didn't happen, I would still be at this 300 unit count, but I had a different path. It was like up and down, right? And
Mhm.
that's kind of like what had happened. But there was a point where my landlord said we can't do this like revenue share thing anymore. You have to go back to your lease and pay your amount, and if you can't, you got to pick up your stuff. And now all of a sudden you're in 2021, where by springtime 2021, I think it was, is where they removed all the restrictions for COVID, and all of a sudden there was some pent up demand in 2021. And my business did record numbers in 2021 from a net income perspective, not revenue, but a net income. And then that was also because I had revenue share in my slow months. So those losses that I take in those months, I didn't have that year because I was doing revenue share. So all of a sudden, then my 2021 was a record year for me, and now 2022 is when I start seeing the crazy losses that I was not expecting.
The
In the
losses
winter
in
time,
revenue.
yeah, and even though my revenue is
Mm.
increasing, but like my losses from the winter months were so bad. And this is majority of it like in the first half of the year and then towards the end. So there was okay, so 2022 there was a lot of pent up demand also, and in 2022, I had record numbers in the summer, but all of a sudden I had record losses in the winter because of the pent up demand. There was like fatigue to travel in my market. Everyone came in the summer, but they didn't need to come anymore. They already came recently, right? So I did better than expected in 2022 summer, and then all of a sudden in the wintertime, I started losing more than I ever thought I would lose. And
Right.
everything I made, I ended up using to pay for my winter losses. And that's where it took a toll on me because I'm negative by the time like March comes, and I'm doing back the same thing that I did last time with putting stuff on credit cards and paying rent late by 5 days. And, then I went back to my 2023 year, summer, and summer was good, but it was down from the previous year. So all of a sudden, back to my story of hiring too much, thinking that I was going to hit 400, thinking I
Mhm.
was going to hit $17 million. It didn't happen, right? So I had to make like adjustments to my business.
Well, you've had
So
to pivot.
but yeah, pivot. It's what I'm doing all the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, profitable business though. So you're saying cash is all over the place, but net you're up 1 million in a year.
Yeah, from an IRS perspective, I'm paying them a lot of taxes. That's what it is.
Yeah, so it's so funny that it could be 1 million in profit, yet there's prepaid taxes. Of course, you can always borrow from the Bank of IRS by not paying it, right?
You'll
What's their
see me.
interest rate? What's their interest rate right now?
You'll see me in prison then, I
10%?
think. Oh yeah,
They're okay as long as you file, right?
yeah. Well, man, I get a lot of letters from the IRS of me doing this thing wrong and that thing wrong, but it's always like a $3,000 to $5,000 fine. But the cost to figure it out and reissue the return is probably the same dollar amount. So it's just like you got to just pay them. It's like the
Yeah.
boss comes and collects a little bit,
Yeah.
here and there extra. It's just you don't fight with them. You just pay them your fines without having to investigate.
Yeah, you know what they say. What's the difference between the government and the mafia? The government just got there first.
There you go.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So, how do you see the future looking? With all this, you've faced the adversity.
Yeah.
You've built a profitable business. What's next?
So honestly, like the past years have taken a toll on me in my business. I had dreams of just continuously scaling to something like some crazy unit count, 400 or 500 units, 20 million of revenue. But the the demand of things happening, like the decrease of demand, COVID, regulation changes, lawsuits, and there's just like too much going on. It's been taking a toll on me, and landlord conflicts I've had, to make me, let go of a significant amount of units. So it's almost like, I kind of like this 300 unit count. I kind of like the landlords I'm working with. I don't want the, 11th landlord to be the landlord that, puts me under, and just be with what I currently have. And I was like, okay, an 8-figure business, $10 million a year of revenue, $1 million net income, give and take, like, 10, 15%, whatever, how good the year is. It's a good lifestyle for me. And the stress has taken a toll on me a little bit. So it's kind of where I want to keep my business for now.
Mhm.
But that's today, I always change it. Ask me in 3 months from now, and I might have gotten an opportunity of 30, 40 units. And I'll be like, hey, I want to do 5. Like, my
Yeah.
motivations changes, my personality changes. If I'm able to park money away and my family will be settled for a good lifestyle, then it's like, okay, what if I shoot for the stars? So that's that for the business. But recently, I started seeing the value of a personal brand. So I started creating my personal brand, and that's kind of why I'm doing podcasts now. Or else I wouldn't even be doing this. I didn't do it for 5 years. I didn't care to do it because all I cared would put my head down and grow my business. But it'll be nice to have something to fall back on. If say I never get to that summer season and all of a sudden my cash flows are gone, can I still figure out a way to make money? And I think by a personal brand, it would be a good way
Mhm.
to be able to come up with different revenue streams. So I made a
Yeah.
personal brand. Yeah.
So no direct monetization plan for the appearances and going getting your name out there. It's more just see where it takes you.
Yeah. So initially it was because some of my colleagues started this like course business and coaching and mentoring and
Mhm.
masterminds, and showing me the type of opportunities there are doing that. And
Mhm.
it kind of goes hand in hand. Like, you basically just record your current business, and that, can end up selling you, coaching opportunities. So it kind of worked out that way. And honestly, like it's like a cool lifestyle. Like I started getting like in my other business, like, when they say you want to just work on the business, you don't want to work in the business. I started getting to a point where my work week was like 2 hours a week, and it sounds like, oh, that's a perfect dream, but then you start you start getting bored a little bit. You want to do things, and I didn't have like a good schedule to keep me productive. And then
Mhm.
now this personal brand is making me like work again. All of a sudden, you know you have to appear for these podcasts, speaking engagement. You got to travel here. You gotta look good. You got to get your hair cut. You got to work out. Like these are like positive things in my life. It's a good thing for my lifestyle. I'm meeting people on social media in different countries like Dubai and Pakistan, and you know it's been kind of like interesting to see like what this has doing for me.
Yeah, well, it's I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah.
Been getting some interesting guests lately, and you're definitely one of them. And it's a great story. And you didn't come on here and say everything's roses. You told the cold hard truth, and I like it. And yeah, man, like, so would you do anything different knowing what you know now? Like, I know obviously there's probably a million little things,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean, throughout my thing, like, I told you examples. Like, if I knew like what COVID was going to be,
mhm,
I'd probably have kept all those units.
you'd have doubled
And then
down. Yeah.
the Stay Alfred opportunity that I had at the time, I ended up buying 150 apartments with the furniture. But I wish I bought 500 apartments with the furniture. I started saying no to deals because
You could have
I didn't know
started
what to do.
selling
Yeah.
it. You could
Yeah.
have just started listing it on Marketplace.
Right, right. I thought of different just in case, because it
Yeah.
was like just like it was a gamble, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, how can what's my like hedge on it? Like, okay, yeah, I can sell it at Marketplace. Not that I want to ever do something like that, but yeah, I wish I bought way more.
Hmm.
And there's always certain things that I wish I did. All right, I wish I knew there was going to be lower demand in 2023 than 2022.
Hmm.
But like you can't predict, right? So all you could do is with the knowledge, with you making some gambles
Yeah.
and risks, like you change a little bit, right?
Hmm.
And you weather the storm for the next fight and the next fight, and
For
it'll
sure.
be going on forever.
What do you like million in profit? Obviously, a lot of that is, cash buffer for you, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
what are your other investment goals or activities? Like, are you putting some of this into long-term rentals
Yeah.
or other real estate?
Yeah. So that was always my initial goal. I purchased 3 buildings maybe 4 years ago, when I kind of started this business and I was making money and I was buying real estate. And I was like, okay, by 3 more years, maybe I could buy 3 buildings a year, with the $750,000 of free cash, um, you know, 25% down for each building. Yeah, I could get a couple $1 million buildings every year. But like things happen, right? COVID happens, cash flow problems happen, um, things happen, interest rate increase has happened.
Hmm.
I started saying like, okay, if I want to buy 4 buildings right now, I should get my real estate license, so I could put offers that I want to put on. And as I was trying to figure out how to get my license, every month the rates started increasing, prices started increasing. So I'd have been in a better position to like not have gotten my license and pay the damn commissions and bought the buildings. But also at the same time, if I did buy the buildings, I would have to liquidate all those buildings because of my cash flow problems that I had. So thank God I didn't buy those buildings, or else I'd have
Hmm.
been in a weird situation then.
Yeah.
So now I have 3 buildings and 2 homes that I
Yeah.
made for my business. And then above and beyond that, I splurge on cars. So that's where I spend a lot of money on cars. I drive a couple of exotic cars that makes me feel good. I like them. It makes me happy. But I look at as those exotic cars as investments as well.
Hmm.
Say tomorrow I need cash, it's easier for me to sell my car to a dealership than it is to sell a property, right? Tomorrow I could liquidate my Lambo, and I bought it for 270. I might get 260 for it, 255,
You buy
right?
new, or was it
I never buy new.
oh,
It's
is it?
always
Yeah, that's
yeah,
better. Yeah, especially for those
yeah,
kind of cars.
yeah, yeah. So I have a handful of cars, and those cars I could liquidate tomorrow if I need cash, and that's kind of what I like about them. And also, I had these cars before I started my personal brand, and now that I have my personal brand, it's easier to show
Yeah.
like your reputation by the guy on Instagram with like the nice cars. You see them everywhere.
You kind of have to, and then you just need to start offering coaching, and you're the guy who does Airbnb arbitrage, drives a Lambo, and
Yeah,
does the coaching. That's
I'm
kind of
one of
like
those guys.
the
I'm one of those
standard
guys.
real estate pitch.
Yeah, yeah.
Another one of my friends, they have one, a Lambo, and they do coaching on arbitrage.
Yeah.
Uh,
Who's that?
Karsten Howe, he's been on my show. If you want to look
Oh,
up
okay.
the episode, he's all over
Yeah,
the U.S. So he'll go into every different market. He's invested in 5 different cities last time I talked to him in the U.S. that he's never been to, which I
yeah,
find is hilarious. So he
yeah.
negotiates it all over the phone. So you guys have a different approach, but yeah, I like your backyard investing approach. There's definitely some merit to that. And then there's people who will say the opposite and do that, and that works for them too, and that's all cool.
Right.
Um, Syed, where do people reach you?
So I'm on Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram
Mhm.
at Syed BNB, so SYED BNB,
Yeah,
my handle's at the bottom.
perfect.
And yeah, on my Instagram, I talk about my day, problems I go through, show you the luxury lifestyle of an Airbnb operator. You see everything on there.
Cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It was great getting to know you, and hope we could stay in touch.
Sounds good. Nice meeting you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Infinite banking in under 60 seconds. We've all got to save our money somewhere, and we think that a high cash value life insurance policy is the perfect place to save it. Why? We're going to save our money inside this policy, and it's going to grow tax free. Down the road, we're going to get hit with an emergency or an opportunity, maybe a chance to buy a business, real estate property, an income producing asset. And instead of withdrawing from our savings account, we're going to leverage that asset. We're going to borrow the insurance company's money and we're going to invest in that opportunity. Our money is still inside of that policy, compounding, uninterrupted, tax free, and our money's outside in this investment opportunity. We're going to rinse and repeat, all while providing a death benefit for our families. Down the road, we're going to retire. Now we retire with a high cash value life insurance policy with a lot of cash. We're going to start taking those policy loans again, but this time we're never going to pay them back. When I say never, I mean we're going to pay them back with the death benefit when we die, and our families are going to get left with the rest completely tax free.